Howdy ladies and gents, my name is Thom Gibson and welcome to my channel where I help you create meaningful and memorable experiences for your middle school STEM students. One of the projects that I did in my robotics class to finish up my remote learning year just a few weeks ago was a Rube Goldberg project. Typically in robotics, the students would be able to use their Lego EV3 robotics kits and then basically decide whatever they wanted to build would be their final project. Unfortunately, we were at home. The students were not able to take the kits home with them, and so I had to find an alternative. And in comes Juan Aguirre through my Instagram feed. He's Mr. Aguirre on Instagram. And I see that for his robotics class, he just had students create a Rube Goldberg project. I reached out to Juan and he shared some of the resources that he had, and I kind of adapted it and tweaked it for my students. And so I started out by introducing it to my students by showing them a short video on what a Rube Goldberg project and machine is, as well as giving them some ideas of what some basic household items are that could be used to create their very own Rube Goldberg machine. The first step was they had to figure out what their Rube Goldberg machine would do. Basically, what is that last step of the machine? Usually it's like this big elaborate machine, and the last thing it does is it pours a little salt or it gives someone a high five or something like that. What would their machine do? Then they had to sketch out their actual plans. Originally I just said, okay, just sketch it out on pencil paper, but then I opened it up to however they wanted to create their plan. I let them decide on how they would actually create their plan. If they wanted to use paper pencil, they could do that. They could use Google Drawings. One student asked if he could use this pixel art animation app called Piskel. And then I was recently listening to this podcast that was talking about using Minecraft in the classroom. So I was like, if you want to build your Rube Goldberg project in Minecraft as your plan, go for it. And so several students ended up going that route. But in their plan, they had to have at least 5 steps. And so one step would be if I dropped a marble through a funnel and then it hit a lead domino, okay, that sequence is one step. And then the lead domino hits the rest of the dominoes and then it knocks over a book. That's 2 steps. And so they had to have 5 steps. I wasn't super stringent on what counted as a step. I basically would just ask them, okay, how many steps is this? They're like, okay, from here to here's 1, here to here is 2, here to here is 3. So as long as they weren't saying this domino to that domino is 1. And then if they had 10 dominoes, that's not 10 steps. That's really just part of 1 step. And before they started, I said, feel free to just YouTube Rube Goldberg machine and you will get plenty of ideas for inspiration. So their first grade was a formative grade on their plan. They had to turn in their plan in whatever medium made sense. If they did a paper pencil plan, they would just take a picture of it and then turn it in on our learning management system. If they built something in Minecraft, they had to record a screencast where they're kind of traveling through Minecraft and saying, okay, this is the first thing and it's going to fall down and this is representing the stairs and it's going to go down the stairs and hit this thing, and walk through that process. Or a link to their Google Drawing or whatever app they ended up using. So wherever they created it, they had to give me a link or a screencast or a photo so I could see their plan. We took one Zoom class where students actually walked through their plan with the group. Once they had their plan, they were ready to begin working on it. I actually ended up using one of our in-person Zoom class times for them to actually work on their project, which a part of me is kind of like, well, if we were in school and they were working on their robotics final project, they would just show up to class and then they would work. And then if they needed my help, I would help them. But a lot of times I was just kind of sitting around and just watching and just seeing them work. And so that translating to Zoom almost felt like, are we wasting time here? Could I just say, you guys can go, if you're going to go build, just go ahead and build. You don't need to be in Zoom class. But if you do want to ask me a question, I will be here. And that's kind of the dynamic that it created. They were all in their own breakout rooms, and then I would just go and check in and be like, hey, how's it going? And so the second grade for this was their kind of summative, their test grade. It included a short reflection which said, how many attempts did it take for you to get all the way through the machine, and what was the most challenging aspect of it? The second question was like, is there any material that you wish you had or that you would have used differently now that you've done it? And the third one is like, what's a simple machine around you that has made your life better? So the reflection questions were worth 10 of the 100 points. Then they had to turn in a video showing the full completion of their actual machine. And if they had 5 steps, then that would be worth 80 points. And so that brings them up to 90. If they wanted to get 100 points, every step past the first 5 was an additional 2 points. So they would actually have to do a 10-step Rube Goldberg project to be able to get a full 100%. And I do that because I want getting an A to be fairly attainable if you just do the work, but to get a 100, you kind of have to put that extra effort in. And I think the best part of just going through the final videos was just at the end of the videos when the students were like, yes, like you could just tell that they had just tried it time and time and time again. And then to finally get the video of the final thing going all the way through was completely satisfying for them. We actually used our very last Zoom class time together for everyone to show their videos. Instead of them trying to do the screen share, since everyone had different internet bandwidths and everything, I actually downloaded all of the videos that class period and then played them on my computer. It's less taxing on my computer if I download it versus trying to stream it from the internet browser and also project it on Zoom. And I want to share a few of the ones that were turned in.
So on the first step, you push the wheel through the arch, which then triggers a second step of after colliding with the dominoes, leading up to the release, which then triggers the fourth step of the car rolling down the track, which then triggers the fifth step of the dominoes falling onto the release for the marble, which then allows it to roll down and trigger the sixth step, which the sixth step then allows another marble to be released and roll down a pipe, and then triggers the seventh step, which curves some dominoes around to a Lego bin, and then that falls onto some more dominoes for the eighth step. Then on the ninth step, the dominoes fall onto a wheel, and then on the 10th step, that wheel collides with the Lego figure, knocking it into a bin. Here's my Rube Goldberg machine in action. Let's go! Finally!
And a few students actually had very simple looking machines, but when they actually broke it down and I kind of went in slow motion and they pointed out each little step that they went through, like this student right here, he said that catapult took him most of the day on a Saturday to get it working just right, the high five catapult. And so even though it wasn't the most elaborate machine, there was still a lot of time and thought and effort and problem solving that went into it. And so this was a really fun project. I feel it's actually more optimized for remote learning than actually doing this in class, because if we were doing it in class, we'd be limited to whatever resources there were in the class and everyone would be having to share, and you would be limited in the space that you're in, and you would be limited in the amount of time that you would actually be able to work on it, because a student would be able to start a project and then just leave it there for the next week while you're working on it. They would have to tear it down because other people would be having to come in and use the classroom. And if we have to do remote learning again next year, it doesn't have to be an end of the year, end of the semester project. It could be a project that we do at any point in the school year. So if you would like the slideshow with the introductory video and the grading criteria and the examples and everything, I've included them down in the description below. Let me know if you end up doing it. I would love to see a video of some of the final versions of what your students were able to come up with. I've I've also linked to Juana Guerra's Instagram down below where I originally got the idea. I talked about this project at length in an episode of the Stories from the Classroom podcast. That's my podcast where I talked about 3 of the different end of the year STEM projects that I did with my students. And so I'll go ahead and link to that podcast episode, as well as the 2 other projects that I did. I went ahead and made a separate YouTube video for each of them as well. If you'd like to stay in the loop with any upcoming videos, I help middle school STEM teachers create meaningful and memorable experiences for their students, regardless if they're in the classroom or they're teaching remotely. Go ahead and subscribe. My name is Thom Gibson. I hope you learned something today that'll help you create a meaningful and memorable experience for your students, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.